Maggie never planned to spend her 57th birthday counting crows with a bunch of binocular-toting strangers under Seattle's drizzling sky. But here she was, clutching a battered field notebook, pretending not to care that her raincoat clashed with her sneakers. Farmer's Market flyer had promised urban birdwatching for beginners, not a cure for hollow ache in her chest every time headlines screamed ecosystem collapse. Yet as she scribbled her first tally, 3 juncos, 1 defiant hummingbird, something lit in her ribs. Not hope, exactly. Maggie never planned to spend her 57th birthday counting crows in a rain-slicked parking lot, but here she was, gripping a field notebook with same determination she'd once reserved for grocery lists and PDA meetings. Seattle's drizzle clung to her windbreaker like static, that stubborn Pacific Northwest cling she'd learned to ignore decades ago. Notebook spine cracked when she flipped it open, same one from her teaching days, now repurposed for tracking urban juncos instead of lesson plans. Funny how life shuffled priorities. Her deepest fear wasn't climate crisis itself, but quiet dread of being a spectator to collapse, like watching a car crash in slow motion while strapped in back seat. Yet here, among Farmer's Market birders, a ragtag crew of retirees, baristas, and one 10-year-old with binoculars bigger than his head, she found a rhythm. Tallying sparrows became a rebellion against helplessness. Each scribbled note in her creased pages was a middle finger to despair. First, she'd fumbled with app, thumbs hovering over species icons like a grandma texting emojis. But Collective didn't care. They celebrated her first red-winged blackbird sighting like she'd won lottery, passing her a still-warm cinnamon roll from market vendor. Now, Maggie's morning started with scrape of her boots on wet pavement, eyes scanning power lines for flickers of movement. Some days, grief still lapped her ankles like rising tide, but birds didn't wait for perfect moods. Neither did she. By spring, her notebook bulged with ink-smudged observations, corners curled from coffee spills. Data meant something, to scientists, sure, but mostly to her. Proof she could still learn, still contribute, still spot beauty between cracks in concrete. Turns out, Maggie never planned to spend her 57th birthday staring a news alert about another glacier collapse, her half-eaten muffin crumbling in sync with her resolve. But life had a way of nudging her toward unexpected fixes, like flyer for Urban Avian Alliance tucked between kombucha coupons. Farmer's Market. Bird nerds welcome. No experience, just curiosity. She showed up in sensible shoes, gripping a dollar store notebook like a lifeline. Turned out, tracking crows wasn't just about scribbling wing patterns. It was about learning their gossipy politics, how they held grudges, how they rebuilt. Her first entry was shaky. Mr. Grumpy Pants, black cap, scuffed beak, stole a fry right from my fingers. Rude. Crew, a mix of college kids and silver-haired rebels, laughed when she read it aloud. Their approval felt like sunlight after months of gray. Maggie's notebook became a map of small victories. She learned to distinguish a Buick's wren's trill from a bus brake squeal, spotted a barred owl tucked into an alley maple like a feathered secret. Each page deepened her grip on a truth. Paying attention was its own kind of hope. Then came slip, literal. Rain-slick pavement sent her sprawling one morning, notebook skidding into a puddle. A teen in a Save Bees hoodie scooped it up, gasping waterlogged sketches. Whoa, you're one who logs hawk nest near library? That's lit. Maggie blinked. She hadn't realized anyone noticed her scribbles. By summer, her entries fueled a neighborhood effort to protect that nest from construction. Her hands, once restless over climate headlines, now steadied binoculars and passed around homemade cookies meetups. Grief hadn't vanished, but it had company, a flock of allies, a purpose inked one messy page a time. World kept unraveling, sure. But Maggie? She was too busy learning its stitches. She never planned to spend her 57th birthday knee-deep in mud beside a freeway off-ramp, counting sparrows with a gaggle of retirees armed with binoculars and stubborn optimism. Yet here she was, field notebook smudged with rain and determination, scribbling tally marks next to junco sightings while her knees protested. Urban birdwatching collectives weren't exactly how she'd imagined saving planet back when recycling bins still felt lit. But climate grief had a way of shrinking grand gestures into small, stubborn acts, like showing up every Thursday to track birds most people stepped over Starbucks cups to avoid. Seattle's farmers market meetups had lured her in with promises of cherry pie and casual science. Turned out pie was just bait for recruiting citizen scientists. She balked first. What good were a few spreadsheets against rising seas? But 3 months in, she'd learned crows held neighborhood grudges and hummingbirds were tiny, rage-fueled helicopters. Data points piled up in her notebook, each entry a quiet rebellion against despair. Doubts still crept in. Some mornings, she'd stare news headlines, wondering if tallying robins was just rearranging deck chairs on Titanic. Then she'd remember barred owl she'd spotted nesting in a parking garage, its unbothered glare mirroring her own refusal to quit. Notebook in hand, Maggie pushed through drizzle and self-doubt, because tracking one stubborn sparrow meant bearing witness. And sometimes, bearing witness was bravest damn thing you could do. Creator never planned to spend her 57th birthday staring down a trash-streaked alley, field notebook trembling in her grip. But here she was, tracking a disheveled crow with intensity of a detective on a murder case. 3 weeks into her self-appointed urban bird census, a wild pivot from doom-scrolling climate headlines, she'd become neighborhood's unlikeliest scientist. Her notebook, battered and coffee-stained, held scribbled secrets, ruby-crowned kinglet, 7:32 a.m., pecking discarded bagel. Proof that life persisted, even here. Yesterday's entry had gone unexpectedly lit, a blurry shot of a bald eagle snatching a salmon from Duwamish, snapped mid-sprint as woman hurdled a bike rack. She'd posted it to local birding forum as a joke. By dawn, it had 400 shares and a city council member begging to use it for a wetlands campaign. Farmers market regulars who'd once smirked her bird lady antics now sidled up with phone pics of sparrows. Even Gary from hardware store, a man who'd loudly declared climate science hooey while buying floodlights, slapped down a grainy shot of a barred owl. Kid's got a nest in my juniper, he muttered, as if confessing to treason. She flipped open her notebook with a grin, adding his sighting to community log. Then came gutsy move. On a drizzly Thursday, she taped a hand-drawn map to Market's honey stall, marking every nesting site within 10 blocks. Join flock, it urged in wobbly Sharpie. By noon, 12 strangers had scribbled their names. By Sunday, they'd formed a ragtag brigade, retirees in rain ponchos, teens with binoculars, a barista who ID'd warblers by ear. They called themselves Rain City Rookery, because woman insisted puns were mandatory. Laugh lines deepened as she sketched their first group tally, 47 species, including a wayward puffin spotted near ferry terminal, probably a plastic bag, but hope was free. Her notebook, once a solitary record, now brimmed with communal scribbles, a messy testament to eyes lifted upward instead of inward. That evening, clutching a cupcake with a single candle from her new flock, Maggie finally understood, grief could mold into something lighter. Life wasn't just worth capturing. It demanded witnesses. Maggie never planned to spend her 57th birthday sobbing over a melting glacier documentary, but there she was, knee-deep in eco-grief, clutching a half-eaten pint of vegan ice cream. Seattle's gray skies mirrored her mood until a rogue crow landed on her fire escape, cocked its head, and dropped a gum wrapper her feet. Fine, she thought. I'll bite. She dug out an old field notebook, its pages yellowed but hungry for purpose. That week, she logged every sparrow, jay, and that one dramatic seagull that stole a tourist's hot dog. Turns out, urban birds were lit, resilient little rebels adapting to concrete jungles. Soon, her solo obsession became a farmers market meetup, Rogue Raven Collective. Retired teachers, baristas, even a punk rock grandma with binoculars slung like a bandolier, all scribbling in notebooks, turning dread into data. Maggie's once lonely ritual bloomed. She guided newbies in decoding crow dialects, mapped nesting hotspots, and laughed when her crew dubbed a particularly sassy robin Mayor McSheep. Each entry in her notebook felt like a love letter to a planet worth fighting for. By summer, their data helped restore a polluted greenway. Now, her hands, once shaky with helplessness, steady a scope for a wide-eyed kid spotting their first hummingbird. This was antidote, not hope as a passive wish, but as a verb, inked in graphite and shared over stale muffins. Grab your notebook, Wild Wonders waiting. No cape required.